I am live. All right, diving right in. Going to give you the numbers, the planes coming in again. Said I'd make this a daily occurrence. These are the planes coming in to Toronto's Pearson International Airport on the 29th. So the day coming up. We've got planes from New Delhi, New York City, Newark, New Jersey, Ethiopia, Philly, Charlotte, Detroit, Frankfurt, Chicago, Pakistan, London, England, Trinidad and Tobago, Beijing, Dallas, Tampa, Los Angeles, Fort Lauderdale, Fort Myers, Orlando, Bogota, Amsterdam, Houston, Cuba, Turkey, Washington, D.C., Boston, Mexico, Charlotte, Shanghai, Atlanta. There are 40, by my count, I make it to be 48 planes coming in from 30 different countries around the world. Now, why do I point this out? Why? To me, it just exemplifies the absurdity of lockdown measures. You can't dine in a restaurant, but you can, get onto a metal tube with recycled air, two bath, the Caribbean, to Trinidad, down to Cuba, down to Orlando, Florida, Fort Myers, Fort Lauderdale. That's okay. That's allowed. I guess that would be deemed essential. I had a sign made up at the beginning of the pandemic, the original, when we started this madness back in March. There's my sign. I don't know. It's looking backwards to me. I don't know if it'll come out straight, but to all who've lost jobs and businesses, you are also essential. And the bottom is, don't lose heart. God loves you all the time, no matter what. There you go. I'm going to have to put it back out. This whole idea of telling one group of people you're essential and another group of people they're not essential. In my world, every single human being is essential. But what did I title this video? The Two Solitudes. We seem to have two basic ways of looking at these lockdowns. On the one hand, you have those who are completely in favor of them. They actually, they might even complain that they don't go far enough, that the government should step even further in, do similar to what's been done in the province of Manitoba, where the government has actually told people what stores are essential, and then further what you're allowed to buy in those stores. So Walmart's essential, but you're not allowed to buy clothing. You're not allowed to buy sporting goods. You're only allowed to buy essentials. I can understand to a degree the rationale that if a sporting goods store in Portage La Prairie or Brandon or Winnipeg, if they can't be open, if they're not allowed to open their doors to the public, why should someone be able to go into a Walmart and buy those same products? So there is a certain degree of logic to it, but I would submit, when you have, if this is essential, all these planes coming in, dozens of planes, probably 10,000-ish passengers a day. And that's just the international flights. I don't even, I look at the Canadian flights, but they're coming from all over Canada as well. And there are connecting flights. So the people coming in from Shanghai, from London, England, from wherever, a lot of hot spots. I'm sure there's a number of them catching connecting flights and traveling to other parts. So on the one hand, we have those who think, these lockdown measures, good, great, we're all in this together. And then you have a lot of individuals who are opposed to the lockdowns. We're seeing protests. We're seeing churches, in some cases, defying the orders, and getting fined heftily for it. I would say that those who are opposed, who are protesting and speaking out against them, that it's a minority viewpoint. It's a sizable minority, but it's still a minority. I think the majority of people are okay with the lockdown. And I think the biggest disconnect between the two groups, it depends on, the degree of the blinders. I think for most people, I tend to think people, they're either still working, either at home or not, but they're still working, so they still have income coming in, or they have stable income from retirement. And the lockdown measures for them are not that bad. You said it before, you can still sit at home binge watching Netflix, getting your delivery order weed, your Amazon. If you're afraid of, deathly afraid of contracting the novel coronavirus, you can go to, you can have even your groceries can be delivered online. There's no need to step out of your house. That's not the type of world I like living in. We all have different degrees of sociability. I'm a social animal. I like getting out. Fortunately, I am still working, so things are not that bad for me. But there are a lot of people who are hurting right now. A lot of people feeling isolated. Now, on one of my earlier videos, posted it to my Facebook page. One of my friends said, talk about long-term care. What are the numbers out of long-term care, et cetera, et cetera. And we've all read the stories about how overwhelmingly, I haven't looked at it for a while, but in the neighborhood in Canada, they've been saying that around 80% of the people dying of COVID, that they are residents in long-term care facilities. And I've pulled it up here. I know there's a way for me to share a page and have it populate, but I don't know how to do it. I haven't figured it out yet. But I mentioned that the Ontario Long-Term Care Association, that they have a website, oltca.com, and they have a facts and figure page from 2019, basically giving a snapshot of people who are in long-term care, and it's not pretty. It's depressing. 90% of long-term care residents, 2019, 90% of them, 90% of the residents had some form of cognitive impairment. 86% of residents need extensive help with the activities of daily living, ADLs, getting out of bed, dressing, eating, toileting, those kinds of things. 80% have neurological diseases. 76% have heart / circulation diseases. 64% had a diagnosis of dementia. 62% musculoskeletal diseases like arthritis and osteoporosis. 61% taking 10 or more prescription medications. 40% need monitoring for an acute medical condition, and 21% have experienced a stroke. Both of my parents have passed. All my grandparents have passed, and both my grandparents, my grandmother and my grandfather, those are the only two I knew. They were my father's parents. My mother's parents passed before I was born. But my grandmother and grandfather lived long enough that, unfortunately, both of them went into nursing home, long-term care type environments, and eventually passed. And it was sad. Death is always a sad thing. And but with that being said, while it was sad, it was also, to a degree, it was a relief, because they had been suffering. And no one likes suffering. And as I've said many times, our time on this earth, we're transients. We're passing through. This isn't home. Now, that's my faith. I know that for some, they believe that that this life is all that there is. That you live, you die, and then your worms meet. And it's a different view, and it might. I've noticed that there are a lot of churches that are opposing the lockdown measures, And I think a lot of the reason may have something to do, at least partially anyway, to do with that differing worldview, that this life is not all there is. We're to make the most of our time here, but there's a life after this. And can I prove it? Can one prove empirically the existence of God? No. Absent. No, you cannot. Something that comes from in here. You can look at, many of the world's greatest scientists of the Enlightenment were Christians. They believed in God. Now it's not the most popular viewpoint. It's more popular to think that this entire universe, the cosmos, this planet, everything is a chance, random occurrence. That mentioned it before. Blah blah blah. 4 or 5 billion years ago, a Big Bang explosion, and then matter was just floating around, and then by some cosmic accident, DNA, the building block of life, just came into being out of nowhere. Something I can't reconcile my belief system to. Order comes from order. Chaos leads to chaos. But I'm not going to go too deep into that. It's going to be a short video tonight. There were no facts and figures coming in from COVID, because today was the Monday following Boxing Day. So this was a statutory holiday in the province of Ontario. So we'll get some numbers tomorrow, see where things are. But as I've stated before, what I think you're going to see, what we're all going to see happen, is that in 4 weeks' time, after this supposed 4-week lockdown, that we're going to see case numbers at 3, 4, 5, maybe even 6,000 a day. And at that point, the lockdown will be extended. I'm expecting even the schools that they've said, I believe the date is January 11th. I think we're going to see January 11th come, and they're going to, case numbers are going to be too high. Right now, the dip in testing, we're over the holiday period. People aren't going to go and rush out to get a COVID test, especially when most people are experiencing either very mild symptoms or none whatsoever. There's a big push on to get asymptomatic people testing. They've started doing in the schools. Well, it doesn't matter if you're presenting symptoms or not, whether you're sick. We're going to test you anyway. And of course, given PCR testing and how the experts, even say it again, Ontario, Dr. Barbara Yaffe, Ontario's Associate Chief Medical Health Officer, she's on public record is saying that it almost, false positives almost half the time. People may have something else. How you expect to manage a situation when you can't even measure it? This is why we have 50, 60, 70 planes, international flights going, and yet, a fitness class, a yoga class, Pilates, whatever the case may be, they're not allowed to meet. That's too dangerous. But you can go line up and, get into Costco, you can go to Walmart. It's okay for Amazon fulfillment centers to have 400 plus outbreaks, and they're not going to close them down. So, people are waking up to the fact that the measures are incredibly illogical, that seems to be no scientific basis, no rationale for it. But some are, I think some, the Two Solitudes, the people who are in favor of it, it's like, well, maybe if we just all do as we're told, this will go away. Well, on that, even if we do as we're told, I mean, all the planes, 50, 60, 70 planes coming in every day. Amazon fulfillment centers, 400 outbreaks, or 400 cases, but not having to close. Same with Walmart, same with Costco. Say have outbreaks, they don't have to close. Food processing plants, we've got to eat. So, the cases, 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 cases. And now the testing's going up, 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 up. Right now we're in a lull. It's the holiday season. But the province has a stated goal. They want to get us up to 100,000 tests per day. And we've been close to 70,000. Give it another week or two. By mid-January, I think, I'm expecting we'll be seeing, at least 80, 90,000 tests, if not 100. And once we get to 100, 3,000, 4,000, probably close to 6,000 cases some days. And, this is the first virus ever in human history. It's ever been managed this way. You never tested for flu. And I know people say, oh, this isn't the flu. Well, the flu is a deadly virus. Influenza is a deadly virus. Go to Stats Canada, look up top, leading causes of death from the year 2018. You'll see that 8,511 Canadians died of the deadly influenza virus strains that were circulating that year. Significant level of death. But we didn't do this. We've been Zika virus, norovirus, the Hong Kong flu pandemic of 1968 to 1970. We didn't do this. People talk about lockdown measures as if this is the way it's done. This is how you stop viral. Well, never before in human history has this ever have these types of measures ever been. They were never even talked about. We never heard anyone talking about shutting down schools, businesses, wholesale. You quarantine the sick, and you took measures. You advise people, if you were sick, to stay home. That's standard operating procedure. When you're sick, stay home. Wash your hands. I mean, we've got an aerosol. This is an aerosol. We're told it's an aerosol. Another bone of contention. It was going back to May or June. A number of accredited experts were saying that SARS-CoV-2 is transmitting via aerosols, that it's airborne. You might remember that from one of the movies. I forget whether it was Contagion or Outbreak, where one of the scientists says to another, "Oh my God, this sucker is airborne. It's a big deal. It's airborne." Because, and it is a big deal in the sense that it means control measures are almost pointless. I mean, aerosols can hang in the air for hours. They can get into the ventilation systems, and you've got eyes. No one's walking around with goggles sealed over their face. Aerosols can get in there. It's not just the mouth. We can all wear masks. Half the people I see wearing these masks, half the time it's down below their nose. It's not gonna keep a virus out. They're made of cloth, and cloth masks have been. There's only ever been one study. Look this up if you want. There's been one study done on cloth masking, recommended against the use of cloth masks. Because it was a 2015 study done by an Australian team. It was published in the British Medical Journal in 2015. Okay. We're talking about something from the 19th century or 18th century. 2015, they published it in the British Medical Journal, and it was in a healthcare setting in Vietnam. They had 3 arms. It's called a randomized cluster trial. They had a cloth mask arm, they had a medical mask arm, and then they had an N95 mask arm. And there are respiratory infections that happen background in the general population. We get them. However, so that's the baseline. The baseline is normal rate, normal incidence of respiratory infections. So I wanted to see what were the outcomes of people wearing masks all day during a working shift in a healthcare setting. What they found is that the cloth mask arm had a 13 times increased risk of developing a respiratory infection. That was for the cloth masks. The people wearing the medical type masks, those individuals had a 2 times double the increased risk of a respiratory infection. And then the N95 masked arm, they did not wear the masks all day long. They didn't wear them their entire shift. They were only worn as needed when they were doing an actual procedure. And then as soon as the procedure was done, throw it in the garbage and don't put another one on until the next procedure. And that group had zero increased risk of a respiratory infection over baseline. So the recommendation of the team, the research team out of Australia, was that cloth masks should not be used. It's the only study they said, every study has its limitations. So they recommended that further research is needed, and that further research is always needed. It's more validated if there's a second trial that replicates the result. That's called empirical evidence. So right now, we don't have we don't have any evidence on cloth masks suggesting that they do anything to limit the spread of a virus. And certainly from our experience here in Ontario and elsewhere in Canada, ever since it's mandated, case numbers just going up, causing, everyone likes to talk about cause and effect. Well, I think a reasonable thing to do now would be to stop mandating masks and then track the infection rates then and see if they go down or if they stay the same or if they go up. And if they go up, then you could say, okay, at least we've got some data to go on. But if they stay the same or if they drop, well, that's difficult because there's a political and psychological element to this whole pandemic stuff. And that's, even, it's said that a drowning man will grab at an anchor. You got to do something. And I noticed that in the early days of the pandemic, even though our health professionals were saying, look, masks don't do any good. But people were wearing them regardless of the medical advice. And they were thrilled when the medical advice changed. See, I was right. These masks work. Hasn't looked like they've worked so far. But that's enough. 22 minutes. I want to keep these to 20. Peace, everyone. God bless. And we'll see you again tomorrow, maybe.